Hey guys, this is Turok, take two. And today I'm doing a review of chapter 1069 of One Piece, and this is a great one. And we get some interesting lore here today from Vegapunk. Luffy. Tekken is going to be very happy with some of this because in a roundabout way, Vegapunk explains finally something of what devil fruits are, although still not quite where they come from exactly, because they're called fruits. Why are they embodying fruits? And that he's still holding that back. Maybe he doesn't even know, and maybe Oda is holding that back. Let me sit down a little bit. Maybe Oda's holding that back because of that has to do with Laughdale, and it's like a major story thread. Should I try like this? I think so. There we go. So, the last chapter, the CP0 agent came here under pretense of dropping off Esper, which is a Kuma's pacifista. And actually, I need to clarify something that I just realized too. When I'm saying Kuma's pacifista, I just realized they still made a Kuma pacifista. These are the version 2.0 of pacifistas. The original pacifistas that we saw used in battle, were all looked like Kuma. And I just realized too, why did Vegapunk decide to use Kumas as the archetype of that is just my reflecting off my ass. Why did he use them as the archetype, Kuma as the archetype for making pacifistas, instead of making something from scratch? Like he could have used, like he has his clone Atlas as a giant girl, like that form. Why did he, would that not be a form he thinks is battle ready, battle capable? Is Kuma, because his girth size, he wanted to use a shape like that. Kuma has like a robust, big chest. He's a big guy like that, as a way to house what he needs to make those things fire lasers and have sufficient power. So that's interesting to think why he made them like that. So CP0, came. I think they arrive actually at the end of the chapter before, and they come to the shores at this one, and they're using this pretense to bringing Esper back to try to come ashore, but all the Vegapunk clones have already been briefed, you could say, or informed by Stella Vegapunk, the Vegapunk, of the danger they're in. So Pythagoras turns them away very nicely, saying, "Oh, we don't need you. Not need you. We're too busy right now. Please go away." And they forcefully come ashore. And by the way, we don't find out because was it Lucci who says it? We don't find out. They mentioned about different CP agent ships for like CP 5, 7, and 8, I think it was, disappearing nearby here. We don't find out whether that was just like whether they're pinning that on the Egghead Island, or whether that was something that actually happened, or they disappeared by other means. I couldn't understand whether that was another pretense they were trying to use to come there. Of course, they're coming there to actually kill Dr. Vegapunk. But anyways, they forcefully made their way on the island and attacked Atlas because they were in her lab area. So let's start the chapter. Also, we saw at the cover story that Caesar and Judge do know each other, and they were fighting each other. And now the cover story here, I'm gonna have to look into this more because I don't remember much about this guy, but he looks familiar. We see a ship that reads MAD, which is the scientific organization that Vegapunk, Judge, Queen from who's on Kaido's crew, and Caesar Clown were all part of, going around it looks like a steamship. And there's this guy named Lone Shark King Lufeld going around. And it says the philanthropic endeavor of this guy going around. So, and this guy's got the dress. He's dressed up similar to how Crocodile always is. Very suave and whatnot. He's holding a glass of wine and a cigar like Crocodile. And he wears these tiny little glasses. He's got a big grin. And he's got some hair. It looks like it's, I don't know if he's supposed to be kind of graying because he's got like these striped look because it's in black and white. Not sure. I'll wait for Teching to tell me that because he knows all that stuff much better than me. So we begin here with more of the laboratory staff running away in chaos here. It even reads in the corner, Egghead in chaos. And we start off left off with Luffy and the others. Actually, I'm using my monitor here to help see some of this too, because it's bigger. Luffy and this small. Luffy, Chopper, and Jinbei are still staring down Lucci and the CP0. And the first thing we see is Chopper's freaking out. And Chopper freaks out, and Jinbei is extremely surprised to see them there. So as a former warlord, it seems that he fully understands he did bring them up in the last chapter, so he knows about them. And he must be fully aware that if they're there, the government means business in executing Vegapunk. So he just looks quite surprised that they would to see them in person. So they, even to someone like him as a warlord, although, you know, now that I think about it, warlords probably rarely attended any government meetings. They just kind of did their own thing and were just called upon very rarely. But he looks extremely surprised there. So that's something to think about, how a warlord like him is like, oh my God, the CP0's here, and this is serious business. We gotta be ready for anything. And Luffy is just screams at Lucci like, what are you doing here? What's going on? And Lucci changes back right here. Lucci, because the scene where they're squaring off, first staring down at each other, Lucci's still in his leopard hybrid form, and then he switches back to his human form. And Lucci is the one who just reminds him, like, oh, dude, well, this is a government island. We technically can be here if we wanted to. And he's like, oh yeah, we're out of place here. We're pirates. Oops, that's gas. Well, I don't. But he still has a point. It's not like you would see someone like Lucci, a CP0 agent at a scientific island, I would think. Them being at any lobby made more sense to me, because it's a judicial island. They should probably be hanging out somewhere near there. So this is something very interesting too. So Kaku's like, oh crap. So he don't go, oh crap, really. He's like, oh, it's a Straw Hat. Well, Lucci, we can't lay a hand on him. We gotta back off. Cause he's an emperor, we can't engage him without orders. They're worried about any backlash that could cause and make trouble for the government because of his the influence he can have over having many allies now. So that's an interesting point there. But what happens here is that, actually Stussie's the one who points that out. I was thinking about that. Stussie points that out. Even a small tiff can flare up in an all-out war, she says. And she orders one of the staff with them, the cannon fodder, if you will, to contact the Marines about this, let them know what's going on, that they're there. Oh, that's why. I was reading ahead. All right, I read this. Never mind. So Luffy, though, is looks like he's prepared to engage them because he understands. Well, I guess he understands now because he knows Vegapunk's in danger. He gives Bonnie over to Jinbei, and he runs forward, and then he runs up to Atlas and he's like, "Oh, she's This is where he really gets fired up because I see. So he goes up to her, and actually, I can look at this one too. I can see here. He goes up to her and sees that she's been harmed, and she's smoking up at this point. So she's definitely a machine, and so she's all smoked up. Her other eye is just white, the one that we didn't see cracked. And then Lucci starts talking to the other Zero agent, saying, "I'm aware of the consequences." That said, he looks like he knows there's a fight about to happen, so he's aware to take the heat. And while he says that, Luffy orders Chopper to try and help Atlas, and he's the one he points out, "Yeah, sure, I'll try, but this is something Frankie would be better with." And Lucci says to Luffy, like, stay out of this. You should not get involved. It's government business. Like, that stopped him last time, Lucci. And of course, Luffy ends off with a statement that we know he's going to help because of this. He says, "That kid gave us food." So anyone who shows kindness to him, just like with not Otama, was it Otak? What's her name? With the cheek fruit. When she helped him, he helped her. Well, she saw her in trouble. I don't know. Anytime someone shows him kindness, I'm having a hard time thinking of a good example off the top of my head. He sees them get hurt. He's not going to let this slide. So now we switch over to the Navy HQ, being after they've been informed by the Cypher Pole agents, and we see Akainu being informed of this, and he's screaming like, "What the hell? They're there, Straw Hats?" And then he asks about how has Vegapunk realized that CP0 is trying to kill him, and the Marine there reports that because they had to force they even had to force the way in. And he goes on, "You think these brats would consult me before declaring war?" I think he's referring to CP0. I thought when he first said that he was referring to the Straw Hats, but I think he's referring to CP0 because they're much younger than him. So he's calling them brats. But they didn't, if I'm reading it right, they didn't know that Straw Hats were there. They couldn't tell that this was going to happen. Although So then Akainu muses over the possibility that Vegapunk is going to work with the Straw Hats. This is going to be very bad for us and our military superiority. Because that's actually what they. Actually, yeah, that's just why they just disbanded the. It was the kings and queens at referee that officiated it, but it was out of the Marines' hands. But they dissolved the warlords. And now Akainu knows they have to rely upon we're going to have to rely on Vegapunk now, but now also they need actually, this is a little confusing in a way. This is actually a little bit, this is not what do you call this? So he said if they go, this is going to be a blow to our superiority, but he was going to get killed by CP0, and he knows they're there. What were you planning on doing then, Akainu? Yeah, kind of. What were you planning on doing to keep Egghead Island up and running if you had your superiors ordered Vegapunk to be killed? So next we found out he sent Kizaru ahead to Egghead Island. He asked where he is, and so he's already left off for there. And he tells the Marine there to relay a message to Lucci to not engage Straw Hat under any circumstances and wait for the other reinforcements from the Marines to arrive. But as we're about to see, that it's too late for that. So we go back to Egghead Island, a pull-out view of it, and then we see sound effects of fighting, and we pull in, and we already see that Luffy and Luffy and Lucci, I'm gonna have to make sure I get this correct, are already clashing each other and destroying bits of the lab here. I'm gonna call it Atlas's lab. This was the area she was working in. And so we see Jinbei and Chopper retreating with the other staff. Chopper's in his that big puffy human form, hybrid form of his, and he's holding Bonnie, or Jinbei is the one carrying away Atlas. And Chopper points out, like, Luffy, can you wait till we leave at least? Come on now. Of course, Luffy sometimes when he gets in a combat, he's not really looking around. You gotta be careful of the collateral damage, Luffy. This is not a good idea. That's something too. Luffy's gotta be careful of stuff like that. Some people are gonna get hurt if he's not gonna be careful. And Jinbei's like, Luffy, you gotta be careful. This is gonna become a very major incident if you do this with CP0. Well, I mean, he already did this stuff last time with Jinbei. I think is he is still new to the crew, so he's still kind of realizing that Luffy doesn't care about clashing with the government. He did this 2.5 years ago with Lucci before, when he was CP9, and then Enies Lobby ended up getting destroyed. In some ways, actually, I'm almost surprised that Luffy's bounty didn't get even higher than it did, given that I think they did pin the destruction of Enies Lobby onto him and his crew after that incident. But anyways, we see that they're fighting there. We got Luffy. Yeah, you can tell here that Luffy is using his Gear 5th, because he's got that white cloud thing around his back. And then you'll see here that Lucci has some red flame around him, and shortly we'll see why. So we switch over to the other Straw Hats with Shaka and Pythagoras and them watching the battle through the cameras on their screen. And one of them says, is that supposed to be Nami that says that? Did Lucci always look like that? But then Shaka points out the speed is such a rare sight. Like, what speed? And he points out here that it's an awakened zone. So Lucci has awakened his zone fruit as well. And he says most awakened zone powers tend to overwhelm the user's mind. Which is actually very interesting, because we assumed Kaido was an awakened zone, but he also seemed to have control of it. So I'm wondering if he actually wasn't awakened yet. That almost makes me think he wasn't. And that would be scary if true, if he fully awakens it later and becomes even more powerful, because Luffy could barely handle him. Luffy didn't really win that. I keep forgetting that myself. I was rewatching Tekken's fight. Not Tekken. I was watching Tekken's video recently where he was talking about what would this rematch between Lucci and Luffy be like. And he made a good point that I forgot, that Luffy did not beat Kaido on his own. Kaido was worn down through multiple fights. He had to fight the Red Scabbard. He fought his daughter. That came later. He fought Luffy and Zoro and Law, Kid, and Killer all worked together initially to fight against him. And Big Mom was there too. So they probably didn't even they did attack, I think, Kaido a bit more though. So you had like these 4 fights, and Luffy ended up fighting Kaido alone there for a while before he lost, and then he came back later when he got revitalized by, was that Law's crew, and clashed with Kaido for a while again before he ended up getting distracted by that other CP90 agent and lost again, and Kaido was still doing pretty well for himself. Though I assume by then, if you would think about it in a JRPG aspect, his health was probably below half by then. And Luffy awakened his fruit, and they fought one more time, and he still nearly lost. He had a hard time fighting against Kaido. Kaido's power and speed overall was nothing to what's the term, sniff at? So we point out here, we see finally Lucci's awakened form. and he looks much more taller and even nimbler than he did before. Like, so he's like a speed zone for sure. I was just thinking, so also by the way, he looks like he has these flames going around his body. So Luffy had something like that too, and he's got the flames. So I was just thinking I was thinking about it in the contrast between him and Kaido. I'm gonna use a metaphor. If I were to use a metaphor between those two, they remind me. Kaido reminds me of. I'm thinking about the Ginyu Force from Dragon Ball Z. Kaido seems like he would be. Now his name is Rikum. Kaido would be Rikum, who's a very powerful, big buff guy, but he wasn't totally lacking in speed. It wasn't the same as like later on when Future Trunks went into that extreme buff form and couldn't move at all. Rikum was this big, well-rounded is the key term I want to use here. He was well-rounded sort of fighter. And Lucci looks like he's more like Birder, who's all speed and not as much perhaps raw power. Not that that's a bad thing in this case. As long as he's got enough power, you're not just like, I don't know, a sprinter. It's not like he's a sprinter. He's a fighter, but now he's more into the speed categories. Maybe like similar to like some boxers. I've seen some of those, I think it's the welterweights or some of the small weight classes where they are small and fast, but they're not without strength. So anyways, yes, Birder seems like what this Lucci's form is more like. And it says cat fruit model leopard awaken formed in a little text box below hand. And he screams he's grinning at Straw Hat and says, "You're not the only one who's gotten stronger, Straw Hat." And in the background, Kaku's trying to tell him to stand down still because they haven't received permission to fight. And we know for sure now that Akainu doesn't want him to. He wants to send reinforcements before anything happens, before they do any fighting with him. Now we get to the some of the lore bit from Vegapunk. So I think I'm going to pull up on my big screen so I can read this better. Yes, I need to see it here. So, Vegapunk runs into the room with the other, his Shaka, Pythagoras, and the Straw Hats. And he yells to Shaka, "Is he on screen? The White Warrior." And Frankie's so excited to see the real Vegapunk there, and he's got little hearts coming out of his eyes, much like you'd see with Sanji when he sees a pretty girl. And so he asks Nami and the others, would you happen to understand why his transformation, what made this transformation happen? And she says, it's not something we understand. Isn't it just one of his gum powers? And this is where he explains about this, that there isn't any mention of a gum fruit in the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. And Nami's, and the others are all shocked to see this. We see her and Usopp's face in shock. And Usopp explains, yeah, you say that, but that's what Luffy's always called it. Wait a minute. That brings up a good point. I always assumed, based on what I understood about this and from other people talking about it, that when you get your Devil Fruit and you use those attacks, you instantly know the name of the fruit and these names to it because it like innately tells you of sorts. But the gum fruit is not the real name of this one. So did Luffy not understand that name, or if that theory is true that the fruit tells you what you have, does that mean his fruit could lie to him to protect itself as well and say, "Oh, hello Luffy, I'm your Devil Fruit, I'm the Gamu no Mi"? Or is it just Luffy was calling it that because Shanks told him that? Oh, that's very interesting now. Yes, so Usopp points out that's what he's always called it. And Vegapunk's extremely excited by this here, and he goes, "How sublime!" Just like that. And he goes on to say, "This is he looks like a god described in ancient texts." In which Sanji's like, "God, that's just Luffy. You must be senile, old man." Let me pull us back a bit. So now he goes on to say, wait, let me do it in this one maybe instead. I got a tablet and my screen, and I gotta try and, because this panel is the 2-page spread, I think. Hold on. Yeah. Can I make this smaller? No. So then he goes on about how he speaks of the warrior of liberation, whose antics could bring a smile upon anyone's lips, also known as the sun god Nika, as we were told by the text box when he transformed for the first time. And as this is happening, we see Luffy laughing, and he seems to be dodging. He's fighting with Luffy here while Vegapunk's going over this stuff. And yeah, Luffy appears to be fighting with Lucci and just dodging around while he continues to laugh as he did before with Kaido. And while that's happening, that also seems to be in this little text box as they're still fighting. They're showing the some of the staff of the island watching the fight, and there's that drum beating sound going on again that happened before, which I think has to do with Luffy's heartbeat. And while that overlapping that, we see Nami continuing a conversation about how she's never heard of Nika, and Vegapunk says, of course, it got wiped away from history. And even though that happened, Vegapunk goes on, as long as people's desires persist, such a thing will never cease to be. We all there is to desire. For instance, the devil fruits. So he starts going into this abstract, I guess you might call it, of how they exist. And he says how the devil fruits are actually a manifestation of our desire to see how different paths of evolution can play out. And he uses an example like, oh, I wish I could go this way, X, or this way, Y, that way, Y. And devil fruits are a way to actualize these wishes. And each one show a different possibility for the future of humanity. I find that very interesting how that can lead down to different paths of that. And now we see Nico's reaction to this under this concept as he continues to explain it a little more. These deviations are, of course, unnatural, he goes on, and that's why they attract the ire of Mother Nature, the sea itself. And when that happens, we see this great little bit in the next panel of Luffy and Lucci clashing, and they both just have had the right fist punching each other. That typical kind of punch where they clash, joust. I would call it like a joust scene, anime style joust scene that you used a lot in. I've seen them with some of that in Dragon Ball Z, I think. So yeah, I'm just enjoying this scene, taking it in. But so it continues. So Vegapunk continues. One who has eaten a fruit lives a totally alien existence, born of the limited permutations of imagination, which is definitely true for many types of devil fruits, isn't it? Especially Luffy's. Based on the way this is speaking about that, Luffy's fruit is the pinnacle ideal of a devil fruit then. In the idea of imagination anyways. And while they're fighting here, it does look like Lucci is extremely fierce and intent on trying to take down Luffy. But Luffy this time is definitely holding his own easily against Lucci. This isn't, well, I guess he kind of did when he was Gear 2nd. But Luffy this time, in this form, does not seem to be having as much trouble fighting Lucci, like he's going to wear out as quickly as he did using Gear 2nd the last fight. So Vegapunk goes on to say, that's my theory, at least. And he's like, well, whether you believe that there's God or he's like, there's a God out there or not, it doesn't matter. One thing's for sure, we live in a wondrous world. So he's enjoying the fact that he lives in a world with such powerful, unique things as devil fruits live that exist that go beyond his scientific understanding, perhaps. I might have to take a break on this vid. Hold on. All right, I'm back. So it seems here that. So at the end of this, that little speech, we have Sanji, Frankie, and Usopp's faces, and Sanji just looks like he's taken aback by the idea that what devil fruits really are. Of course, he's never actually had one, so he's probably trying to understand this concept. He, of course, is a person who was raised by Judge, and he probably understands science to some degree because of that. So he's trying to wrap his head around what Vegapunk said too. And Frankie and Usopp just look very surprised by this. I think it's by the speech, but at the same time, they're showing this continuous showing the background and clashing of Luffy and Lucci. That panel just shows them actually looking to just zipping around the lab. By the way, they just pointed out, and I was just thinking, they just pointed out in the previous, a little bit ago here, that Lucci's got great speed. I was shocked that I said it. So Luffy's definitely keeping up with him here. So this transformation, I just realized, really must be, it almost should be obvious. This is how they do this in manga. When you reach a new pinnacle of a transformation like this, you usually gain well-rounded stats. Usually, like you've got exceptions where Ichigo's Bankai was about him having speed as well, just like Lucci seems to be with his awakened form. And Luffy, he created his Gear 4th forms. And it seems like, if I recall correctly, his Gear 4th Snake Man was definitely all about speed. Shoot. And if this wasn't in Gear 5th, if it wasn't for Gear 5th being here, I really would have liked to see how Luffy would have used that, if that would have helped, been enough to fight Lucci here. And his Gear 4th regular, while extremely big, he was also very fast in that form too, although I'm certain, that he used Gear 4th Snake Man because it must have been a lot faster. So, but it does seem here that he must be. Also, it's great to see that he just seemed to know now how to instantly change into this form. So I'm wondering if he'll ever actually need to use his Gear 4th forms, or now if they've been retired, much like in Dragon Ball Z, once the Super Saiyan 2 came about, the Grade 2 and Grade 3 being the, or I like to call them the Ascended Super Saiyan, that we saw primarily Vegeta do, which was called like Super Vegeta sometimes, and Trunks used it some too. And the Grade 3, or the Ultra Super Saiyan, as I've also seen it called, or I like to call it too, the buff form, they were no longer shown anymore. I'm sure like those power levels there that are in between Super Saiyan base and Super Saiyan 2 could be achieved, but they no longer had to have those physical transformations, because when you go into Super Saiyan, they do have where your muscles grow, but when Ascended Super Saiyan happened, he got even buffer. It reminded me quite a bit of like how Kaioken times 3 or 4 for Goku initially also changed his butt size, but later on I think he kept using it. He didn't change his buff anymore into a buff form anymore. So anyways, getting off on the Dragon Ball tangent there, I suspect that Gear 4th may have been retired at this point. Although his Snake Man form looked awesome. I kind of hope his Gear 5th here, he can create a variation later where he can have that long-haired look. Also, I noticed, I don't think he used, no, he is actually. In that panel here where he and Lucci are fighting, punch each other, they both appear to be using Haki, and I think that may have been, at least the first time I can remember right now, because it has been months since the end of his fight with Kaido, and I have not gone back to it since. I don't recall if he was actually using regular hockey then, but I can tell for sure. You can tell for sure in his panel that he's got the dark coating of armament on his fist there, and so does Lucci as they're punching each other, having a joust there, as I'm gonna call it. With the lightning, they got lightning and everything happening there. But now the fight switches over, and we also, while this is happening in some of these panels, you still see Luffy laughing, so you can tell so actually that was another thing too. I have to go back a second. Shaka brought up something. Oops, hang on, I have a pocket knife. Shaka brought up about how the nature of an awakened zone can take over oneself. That Luffy definitely seemed to be a bit like that when he first used Gear 5th, being his awakened form, really, against Kaido. Now I'm wondering if he's got a better control of it here. He did seem to turn into it really easily, but he's still laughing here at various points in these panels. And like this last one here is just transitioning. You see him flying around laughing as Sentomaru finally shows up. And he's pointing out, this is supposed to be my day off. What do you want, Grandpa Punk, he calls him. And it shows his little title card. So he's known as part of Navy HQ, Science Unit Captain, Sentomaru. And the next panel, we see the other Seraphim, the 3 Seraphims show up that what's the term? Deployed. That Pythagoras deployed to go with him. We got Jinbei, which we already seen. And then we finally see Boas and Mihawks, and of course they're all in kid form too. And Boas is just dressed in a single piece outfit, dress type thing over herself, and Mihawks is wearing a similar outfit which he wears with a white collared shirt that's open mid drift, like mid down, and the collar's up, and he's got dark pants that come up to about his knee. I think he always wore pants all the way down though, but it's very similar. And he's holding a replica of Yoru in his hand, in his left hand, in his left hand. And of course they all got the wings and the dark skin of the Lunarians, the olive skin. And also they're all wearing those boots that everyone else has been wearing around here. And so Vegapunk here brings up, these are CP90 agents. Can you chase them off? And Sentomaru, he must be talking on a Denten Mushi there. He's like, wait, why would I do that? That'll make me a traitor. And Vegapunk's like, yeah, so you got a decision to make here. Oh yeah, what's that? Oh, no. And Sentomaru says, well, this should be cut and dry. CP0 agents are on our side. We shouldn't be fighting them. And the pirates are always the enemy. So I should be backing up CP0. Oh, look at the eyes. And when we see Jinbei and Boa's and Mihawk's eyes, they all got the stars. So Vegapunk here pulls a little guilt over Sentomaru. It's like, never mind me, Sentomaru. I only took you in when you were starving. Do whatever you feel like it. And Sentomaru gets all shaky and angry and sweaty, and he's like, don't twist my arm, why don't you? Also, I noticed Boa's Seraphim, the Boa Seraphim is the only one who's smiling. The other two both look like they're just bored or grimacing. And so now we switch over to seeing Kaku Stussy with they got Esper. Actually, that's right. Should we just calling the well, I don't know. I want to stay with their names. They're over there. So yeah, Sentomaru has come out facing toward the other CP agents with the other Seraphims he's got. And Kaku's like, oh, this is gonna be tricky. We gotta use S-Bear, and he orders it to take one of them out. And Starsky says, no, we shouldn't do that, Kaku. We got a handicap. And so Sentomaru, we can tell, has decided to work for Vegapunk. And he makes an order to S-Bear and says, get rid of those suits. And so then we find out that, Sentomaru's orders supersede the CP0 agents. And talk about an authority chip. And then we got this great panel where S-Bear goes around firing lasers, much like the old version pacifistas that he looked exactly like, of course. Starts shooting at them, and we see Stussy and Kaku jumping away, and the other agents getting blown up with its lasers. An authority chip being a command device they must have. Okay. So Stussy goes on to we get a little exposition here and a little thing showing it. The command hierarchy isn't in our favor. They can't take orders via transponder sale. Oh, that's what that meant. So what she points out here is we see this little command hierarchy, and the 5 elders, the way this has been installed, the 5 elders have the ultimate authority to control these things, the way Vegapunk has installed it. And then him and his satellites, Vegapunk and his satellites, then have the next hierarchy, or next on the hierarchy, and Sentomaru's below them, and then anyone else below them with an authority chip, with some device they must have with them. It looks kind of like a little cube with a bomb shaped, a little orb in it. The shape actually reminds me of what when Law could take someone's heart out of them, including his own. It looks kind of like that. And so she points out we're in a pickle here because the 5 elders could help us, but they don't. These things can't take order over a transponder snail. So the 5 elders, we can't call upon them. And Kaku is pointing out, like, destroying one of these gizmos would be a huge loss for the government. Would you be careful, Lucci? So hopefully, I guess he's saying he's hoping that Lucci doesn't destroy one of the pacifistas in this fight with Lucci. And then we switch back to Luffy and Lucci, and Luffy gets a good hit in on Lucci using something called, he's still using Gum Gum attacks, by the way, Gum Gum Mole Pistol. I don't know what that is exactly. I see his arm stretch out, and then we see another part of it like circle around, and it's whacking Lucci right in the gut, and he's got some blood coughing out of his mouth there. So now Sentomaru orders the snake. He orders Boa. I'm just gonna say by their names here for simplicity at this point. He orders Boa to help the Straw Hats to the vacuum rocket so they can get up to the Frontier Dome. And then he tells, then he has Mihawk and Jinbei, Seraphim, obviously, to go fight CP9, or suppress them, he uses. Now this is when we finally also see that the other Jinbei and Chopper notice the other Seraphims there as they're running away from them. And he's like, oh, my eyes must be playing tricks on me, because he sees the one that looks like himself. And Chopper says, yeah, I thought he looked familiar. Those brown eyes. Oh, maybe because he's referring to the Lunarians. But he says, they look like ex-warlords. Don't tell me they cloned us. Now he's realizing that they did. And now, yeah, that's right, Luffy does have that smoke around like I thought. So Luffy comes down and talks to Sentomaru. His nickname for Sentomaru, he had Pigeon Guy for Lucci. What did he call Vegapunk? Applehead or something like that? Apple Guy? I guess I don't need this screen. I'm using my tablet. So he comes down and greets them. Long time no see, Battle Axe. And that gets him pretty pissed off. Like, don't nickname me after that. We're not friends. But are you really going to help Grandpa Punk? And Luffy's like, sure, of course. He asked me, so I'll do it. And Sentomaru's like, I don't know if I can trust you. You're an emperor after all. And what's with your appearance? And sadly after that, he gets attacked by Lucci when he's talking. He uses something called handgun, and he pierces right through Sentomaru. And this is where the chapter ends. And he falls on, I think he's not dead, but he's falling unconscious. And Lucci goes on, Luffy, of course, is like, oh no, battle axe. And Lucci goes on and said, oh, all we had to do was cut the head off the snake. Now he says to the Seraphim, you have to obey us. Now there's a break next week, of course. So, yes, Lucci and Luffy going head to head again, using speed once again, just like before, and it was awesome. Of course, I was covered over with the. We had the. I gotta hold on a second. This thing is so annoying. Got ants popping up. I gotta turn my blocker on. We learned a bit about that these devil fruits have to do with human imagination and the ability that our desire to change our course of our history, our future, and what we want to do with ourselves. And that has incurred the ire of Mother Nature. Very interesting concept. So Mother Nature, in some capacity, has a sentience that doesn't like that we are going against her. In some ways, I guess that means Mother Nature has a plan for us, that nature should follow its own, that humans and animals should eat each other and life goes on, but humans have gone against that, and the devil fruits have become an extension of that, and thusly we have made Mother Nature upset by having devil fruits. Also, it's very interesting to point out that Akainu does know that the CP0 agents are there, and he knows that the Vegapunk is probably going to be killed then. So what is he planning on have happen to run Egghead Island and keep those pacifistas going afterward is my question. Who I brought this up in a few past video. How are they going to maintain that, having those kind of things to keep that replace the regular warlords going forward if they have to kill Vegapunk now because he discovered too much. Also, Kizaru's about to come there, and you still don't see the actual Kuma still hasn't yet to arrive. So Kizaru and Kuma, we're about to have a reunion, aren't we? They were together at Sabaody when Kuma sent off the Straw Hats to rescue them from being captured by him. This is going to be a very interesting reunion. So now we have Lucci and Luffy, and then we have Kizaru and Kuma. Oh, this is going to be great next. No, it's not going to be next. We've got a break now. Anything else? Let's see. Yeah, so can Luffy's Gear 5th form, does he even need Gear 4th anymore? He created Gear 4th himself by using his, inflating himself and using Haki, and then the Gear 2nd, which he used to increase his, coerce his body to work in an accelerated speed overall to create his physical attributes better, to deal with someone like a Zoan like Lucci oh, that's interesting. The Lucci who back then just turned into a regular Zoan. Actually, this is interesting too, because Lucci now, Luffy is a Zoan, we found out. He's got an ancient Zoan, human Zoan, but he technically never had a regular transformation. All the other Zoans, like Chopper and Lucci and everyone else we met, had a human and transformed once. They had a animal form, usually because they were animals. That's probably part of the reason. They turned into animals, and then they would have a hybrid form as well. Luffy had to just make his own forms, because his form is about using imagination. But now when he awakened it, he actually does get a new form, but it does increase his physical attributes naturally rather than the way he did it. So it's interesting how a human form, does that mean that, also I wonder if that means that Son Goku's form was actually technically an awakened form, his Buddha form. I'll leave that there for now. We can discuss this in another video.